celebration of the life of Mr. Peter Flihan. Peter is one of the first people that I met when I came to Algonquin in 2015. And I met him not because he was on the board, he was on our board, but because Peter and his wife Linda and their friends John and Mona literally came to everything here. Everything. And they always came 90 minutes early, so we got to spend a lot of time with them. So Peter rapidly became one of our favorite people. He was a tremendous supporter, longtime supporter of the theater. He was also a tireless advocate, not just for this theater, but for all arts, and particularly for young people involved in the arts. And I can tell you from our whole family here to all of yours, he will be very, very missed here. But we will never forget him because we simply never could. So we are going to be joined by a number of speakers today, and I'm not going to take too much more of your time. There's going to be quite a bit of coming and going from the stage, but there's also going to be some music played as well. And then following all of our speakers and our musical selections, there will be light refreshments that we hope that you will join us in the lobby following the service. So once again, thank you very much for joining us. And I would like to invite to the stage Mayor Lance White. He is the mayor of the Borough of Mantoloking.
Good afternoon, everybody. As you were just told, I'm Lance White, the mayor of Mantoloking. Excuse me. It's an honor to be here as we celebrate the life of Peter Flihan. He was an incredible guy, and kudos to you, Linda. It looks like you put together an amazing event, which is very appropriate because he was an amazing man. I just have a couple of comments to make. When Linda and Peter were living on Barnegat Lane for several years, that allowed Mantoloking to become a little bit of a unique town in the state of New Jersey because at that point in time, we had, most towns have one mayor, we had two. We had the elected mayor, whoever that might have been, and then of course we had Peter. And Peter was the mayor of Barnegat Lane. And he took his title as mayor very seriously. Peter was not reluctant to make a call to the appropriate person if something was not right in his part of town. He was always willing to work with one of his friends in the neighborhood if they needed some help. And it was Peter's way of helping make Mantoloking just a little bit better than it might have been otherwise. He was, at the end of the day, a tremendous neighbor and a good guy to have on your street. As you know, Peter and Linda were very involved in the town, and one of the things that they did all the time was to come to the council meetings. I was always very appreciative of that because we didn't always have a lot of people there. And but they would come to the council meetings and and be very involved in those meetings. And it wouldn't surprise you again for me to say that Peter would, when he needed to, he would raise his hand, he'd question the agenda, he would question some project we were working on, what did this number mean, whatever it might be. And again, it was his way of trying to make Mantoloking just a little bit better every single day. And I think people took energy to do that all the time. And I think people, frankly, really appreciated it and admired him for it. I would say that as an aside, during the cooler months, I tend to wear colorful socks. And during those months, I would come into the council meeting, and Linda and Peter would be there typically before me, and the first thing that Peter did was look at my socks. and he'd check them out, and I knew instantly what he thought of them. And either he liked them, and if he didn't, it was, I'm not sure. So I knew. It was a little ritual that we had. It was a fun little relationship that we had that I really treasured, and I enjoyed it very much, to be honest with you. So, along those lines, I have recently acquired a new pair of socks, which I'm wearing today. And I'm hoping very much, and I'll show them to you, I hope you like them, but most importantly, Peter, I hope you like them. Here they are. Thank you. Suffice it to say, Peter was a wonderful, a remarkable, and a unique man. He was a very important part of our community, and he will be deeply missed, and is deeply missed, and will continue to be missed as time goes on. So I say, Peter, take care, and Godspeed. Thank you.
We have a lot of mayors here today. I'd like to invite Mayor Bill Curtis, who is the mayor of Bay Head, to the stage, please.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. And Lance, the socks, just not so good. You've already heard from one mayor, so this is going to be a little different. I'm a mayor also of the neighboring town. But I will recount my perceptions of Peter while I ran the Central Market on the corner of Mount Street and Route 35 in Bay Head, and how Peter interacted with me while I was mayor of Bay Head while he was alive. Because he just didn't pick on Mantaloking, he told Bay Head what to do. But I want you to know, I, like everyone here, am proud to say Peter was my friend. And Linda, I'm so thrilled that you asked me to speak for 30 minutes. I only knew Peter for a short time. I first met him in 1996 when my wife and I moved back from California. But Peter was, from the outset, a person to be reckoned with. He was never, ever shy about giving advice on how I should be running Central Market. He also never shied away from telling me how he would run Bay Head if he lived there. Funny thing, though, his advice never bothered me. I actually listened to what he said. Maybe I even implemented a few of his suggestions. He got to know my wife quite well, and eventually he got to know and like my son, but that was a hard pill to swallow for Peter, because our son played soccer for the University of Rhode Island and constantly beat up on the Fordham Rams. Regardless of that, Peter religiously came into our store every morning. I thought it was to see me, but I was wrong. He became very close with one of our employees, John, who ran our lottery business. Peter and John spent hours playing numbers together with other constant lottery customers. You see, truth be told, Peter gambled a little. He even played numbers when he didn't show up in the store because John knew his numbers and would play them anyway. Peter was actually fond of that. Did he ever win? I don't know. But that wasn't the reason why he came in. That was secondary. He came in because of the friendships he forged and found at that time, and which was his bent on dealing with people. Peter also was a man who was a stickler for rules, even though many of the rules were his own, as I'm sure Lance has found out. He was never silent if you were not following his rules. You got to fly your flag this way. You got to pick up your garbage pail lids. You got to put the garbage cans behind a fence. I don't want to see them. As Lance said, he attended almost every Mantoloking Borough Council meeting and kept 3 mayors in line that I know of: Bill Dunbar, George Niebel, and for too short a time, Lance White. However, Peter also loved Bay Head. Peter and Linda were regulars at our annual clam bake. They also frequented Muller's quite often, and in fact, Linda painted a picture of that area, and Peter was in it, reading a newspaper in front of Muller's. As I've already told you, he attended every day a ritual at Central Market. He was so often in Bay Head, we invited him to the dedication of our new Borough Hall, and he and Linda loved it. In fact, Linda helped me hang pictures in my office, and Peter was right there saying, no, 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 over this way, up this way, down that way. Linda had a great eye, but Peter had a better one, he thought. Peter and Linda were together for 47 years. Linda often referred to Peter as her Big Ben. He was never late, and as you just heard, came 90 minutes early here, and he frowned upon those who were late, including Linda. You also know Linda's a very talented artist, but Peter was always looking over her shoulder, saying, I wouldn't have done it that way. Or, why didn't you do it this way? I am sure he is still looking over your shoulder, Linda. The one thing that I don't think many people know, although you saw it in a lot of the pictures, did you know he was a personal friend of Santa Claus? He made sure, through his friendship with Santa, that Santa visited Mantoloking every year to kick off the Christmas season for Mantoloking residents. In recent years, he even helped me in Bay Head when Santa said, I'm too busy to go to Bay Head. Peter would make sure he came. And he did this because he loved people. He loved children. He loved his family. And he loved Bay Head and Mantoloking alike. Peter will never be forgotten, but he is and will be missed. He cannot and will not be replaced. We love you, Peter. God be with you. And if you are not too busy up there with him, please look over all of us and help those of us whom you've left behind. Thank you.
I'd like to invite Mr. Andrew Flihan to the stage.
Hello, everyone. I know what you're thinking. You're probably saying as I walk down the aisle, gray hair, the height, spitting image of Peter, right? I know. I'm the son that was lost. In fact, I'm not a mayor, but I am Peter's youngest son, Andrew. He used to introduce people to me, people when I was around, and I used to say, when he said, "This is my son, Andrew," I would say, "Yeah, more like the milkman's son." Because I'm like 6'4", and he's what, 4'6"? Sorry, Dad, just kidding. Anyway, I know most of you knew him as Santa Claus. Santa Claus. That's my thing too, the big man in red. Being Santa Claus is like you tell people he's your best friend because you enjoy what you do for other people, the joy it brings to you. He had the same thing that it brings to me. Back in 2000, I was on the McLaughlin Fire Company, and I did the annual Christmas tree lighting, and we had like some drinks afterwards. And we had some good Santa Clauses. But at one time, we needed a Santa Claus. And I thought to myself, who did I know to be Santa Claus? I did know this guy that looked like Geppetto. The guy, Pinocchio. He made toys. My dad made toys. He just Geppetto needed to be plumped up a little bit. And that's when I thought, I'll ask my dad. He loved it. He loved playing Santa Claus so much. Getting in the fire truck, going places. That was his thing. That's my thing. That was the thing we shared together. It was great. Or as he would say, that was magnificent. So I just want you to know that Santa Claus is always watching. And he's up there, always watching. Those families, all you families out there that he took care of. Well, that same spirit runs in me. And I promised my dad that I will keep being Santa Claus for those families because they need someone like that. And we're both Flihans, so the apple didn't fall far from the tree on that one. So, Dad, rest easy up there on your big, red, bright sleigh in heaven, and we will see you again someday. Love you. Ho, 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 ho.
I'd like to invite the Reverend Neil Turton to the stage for the invocation.
Again, I'd like to thank Linda for inviting me. And she said, would I say one or two words about Peter? And I want to begin this invocation, in a sense, by saying, yes, he really was a truly remarkable man. And like all of us, he was very human. And Peter had a way of living which just radiated that sense of happiness and joy and expectation. And like all of us, Peter wasn't perfect. There were times in his life when there were regrets, and I know that he would admit that, as all of us do. But the one thing that stood out about Peter, which has already been mentioned, was just his verve. And I had the privilege of getting to know Linda and Peter as a couple, and they were always good in supporting me in my ministry, always affirming me. And if I was across the street and noticed them, he would bound across and greet me with a hail and hearty hello and that flashing smile which just lit up his face, and you just knew that this was genuine, this was very real. And I would want to add that Peter, like all of us, was a child of God, for he was made like us in the image of God. And he reflected those God-given gifts and qualities which we are being reminded of today. But the one thing I want to say about Peter was an incident just after Superstorm Sandy, which so devastated Mantoloking. And in that dark hour after the storm, as Christmas was approaching, we all gathered in Mantoloking to search for some joy, some light in the darkness, to celebrate the lighting of the Christmas tree. And the evening was going very well, and everybody was, putting on a brave face and looking to the future. And just as the tree was about to be lit, we heard a sound, a roaring sound. And it was the Mantoloking fire truck coming towards us, lights flashing, horns blaring. And then a head appeared outside one of the windows, Santa Claus, and it was Peter. Peter singing above the flashing lights and the horns and the bells, this raucous din, a jolly, holly Christmas song. And I was standing next to Mac McIntyre, and I said, "Oh, for goodness sake, Peter's got the voice of a demented ferret." I said, "Somebody's got to tell him." I said, "It can't be me, it wouldn't go down well." I said, "Mac, you've got to tell him." And he laughed and he said, "Oh, no. So in the years after Sandy, every time I met Mac, I said, "Have you told him? Have you told him?" He would laugh and say, "Oh, no. And the last time I met him, just a couple of months ago, I said, "Have you told him?" "Oh, no. And I guess he never did. Well, it's a bit late now, because I'm telling you, the choir celestial are going to be in for an almighty shock. And that within the faith all of us carry is where we believe Peter now is. Yes, he will be missed, but his spirit indeed will live on in all of us. Amen.
I'd like to welcome Peter A. Flihan III to the stage.
I'm going to try to run a timer so I don't go over half an hour here. You're going to hear a lot of great stories about my dad today. He was a real character. And as kids, we love those little short cartoon characters. But the truth is, when we come into a theater or a place like this, whether we're watching an incredible film or a beautiful performance, it's the longer form where we get to really appreciate the beauty and depth of someone. My grandfather, Peter A. Flihan Sr., Butler as it was in Lebanon, came here when he was 2 with his mom. I've been lucky enough to find that on Ellis Island. They were cloth merchants out of Lebanon in a small area called Baskinta, right outside of Beirut. They came and settled in Utica, which at the time was both a cloth and ceramic capital in America. It was there he met my grandmother, my Nonna. She was born right after her parents had emigrated from Naples. Was from a family of seamstresses. He was a Maronite Christian, she was Roman Catholic. Back in the day, that was intermarriage. But because of that, they were really not welcome in either of their communities. Both of them came from families with multiple siblings, and yet none of those siblings had children. They had the one child, my dad, approximately 10 months after they were married. I know all this because my mom made sure that I spent 3 Julys with them in 74 and 75 and 76. I would give everything to have those 3 Julys back. Not just to have my grandparents, but to ask them the questions in my adult that my youth didn't know I needed. One of the things that was so important, though, is by the time I was in my last summer, which was 74, there had been a fire across the street at a small house. And it had been out for about a week, and my grandfather, who was an incredible guy who liked to investigate stuff, he also liked to play the ponies, so that's where my dad got playing the numbers from. He said, let's go across and take a look at it. So we went across the street, and the house had been burnt down for quite some time, and there was small rubble. There was a white ceramic ashtray that we picked up. And when my grandfather passed in 1982, it was the only thing that I wanted. Because here I was, barely 10, and my grandfather said to me, you know, I wish Mom and I, meaning my Nonna, had been a little bit more open. It was so difficult growing up in the community, you know. Maybe things would have been a little different. And I knew that what he was talking about was that my parents, our parents, my brothers and I parents had divorced in 1972. My brother had just turned 4 and I was barely shy of 7. It's difficult to understand that at that age. It's really difficult not to think it's also not about you. But he gave me a key at the time that I would hold on to for a long time. And I want to thank him for that. And while I do that, I also want to remember that when we talk about somebody, this would be the time when the hero has to go through a little bit of a dark journey. It's short, but we have to go through the hard times. Diamonds have to be under pressure before they can be precious. So from about 72 to 82, things were a little more difficult. We had moved back to Staten Island. My dad had found a job in Massachusetts, and we would see him on a monthly basis and then for occasional things, but it was tough to have a father-son relationship in that situation. I want to credit my mom, Priscilla Hibby, who's here tonight, to thank her for that. Anybody else could have been angry, transformed that anger, and let that anger go. Now, I was young enough to know what their marriage was like at the end, but she would not let me be angry. She would not let me speak ill of him. She would not let anybody in our family do that. She said, he's your father. So any relationship that I got to have with my dad later on, the beauty of it completely, is really due to her. And I want to thank her for that. It was an interesting relationship because even years later, long up until the time Dad passed, they were still, in each other's lives. As a matter of fact, I remember sitting on my mom's porch when my dad came and said, hey, Pris, I really want to get on that Algonquin Arts Board. So you can thank my mom for that. Luckily, in 1982, we began to emerge from that difficult journey. I was thinking about going to college. I looked at a lot of different places, and my dad did not have any input on it. But I had realized growing up in high school that New York City was about the place I wanted to be. So even though I got accepted to a lot of different schools, I chose to go to Fordham, where my dad also happened to go. Now I see Dad and Linda on a regular basis. They would come down and I would begin to enjoy my dad's company. I could tell so because even as I say it right now, I transitioned from referring to him as my father to my dad. I could see him more than just a once-a-month visitor. I could see him as the person that he was. I could see how much joy he got in being around people and how much joy he had to reconnect to a place that meant so much to him, the first place that he went when he left home to start his life. After I graduated from school, I worked for a while in Wall Street, and after a while there, they wanted me to go to Chicago to open their new office. And at the time, I had just started a very young and fragile relationship with somebody that I really cared about. Looks like it's still working on. So I didn't want to go to Chicago, and I thought about, I'll take the LSATs, maybe I'll go to law school. I scored very well. And Dad said, why don't you work with me? He and Linda had started a company designing and making stuffed animals. If you've been to their house, you've seen the beautiful work that's been done. I'd be lying to you if I told you I took that job because it meant job security or a great career. I took that job because my only thought was, I get a real chance to know my dad better. We spent just about every day. I can't even tell you the highs and lows of the business. Maybe I can remember one of two things. But I can remember the conversations we would have over the two desks that were across from each other, over the 12-hour flights to Hong Kong and Seoul, Korea. There were a lot of conversations that I needed to have for quite some time. Most of them in the beginning were not very easy. They weren't easy for me to bring up, and they weren't easy for him to hear. But he was there for them. He accepted them and let me say what I needed to say, and then said what he needed to say. As time gone on, we could have less and less of those conversations as we kind of worked through a lot of that stuff. And I said, wow, this is really getting to be great. And then my wife and I were blessed with children. First our daughter Emma, and then our son Joseph. I can't tell you what a blessing that was, not just as parents, to have such incredible children. But I can tell you what a blessing it was to see my father with them. He loved them unconditionally. He didn't have to understand everything they did. And I guess the one small story I want to bring to that is I remember when our daughter got accepted into a very selective program. And we told her, we said, Jid, because now he was Jiddu. Emma got into this really great school. And he's like, oh, that's great. And he was very excited for her, but not nearly excited as he was a couple of weeks later, after he had checked it out with all his friends, to say, it really is a really great school. Because Dad needed that. It was beautiful to see how he treated them. And I realized at that exact moment, the time when I saw him with his grandchildren, that it wasn't a question of a journey of what had happened or had not happened. He was the best man he could always be, and he got better because he was open to that journey. He got better because he was willing to have that conversation, and he got better and was greater to me because of how he treated his grandchildren. It was the same way he treated everybody as family. And I knew that for the first time, really, in a long time. Regardless of how it felt early in an absence, that he truly loved us and truly loved his family. When you meet my dad, you know exactly who he is. He loves you unconditionally, without question. And it's because he's willing to take that journey. That's why he asks you about the basic things you're doing and are you doing this thing right? It's not because he's simply a busybody. His mom was totally like that. But it's because he cared so much for everything. It all really mattered. So, if you want to remember my dad, and you want to remember him in a way by cutting a really nice check to the Algonquin Arts or the Garden State Film Festival, please do, because the arts need you, and we need the arts more than ever. But if you can set aside a time and a place to open yourself to the journey more difficult, to open yourself to the conversations that maybe you'd rather avoid, I promise you that there's gold to be had there. There's absolutely a happily ever after. It's hard in these kind of times to realize or function and accept deity as part of our lives. I don't know whether or not, for any of you, if I can tell you whether or not there's a God. I feel it for me, and I feel how God speaks to me. But I do know this: there must be a heaven. Not because I need it, not because any of us need it, but because Dad so richly deserves it. Thank you.
I'd like to invite Joe Leone of Joe Leone's Italian Specialties to the stage, please.
Okay. I normally speak in front of a lot of people and some of the things that I do, but for some reason I'm very shaky, and you understand when I open up in the bag. And talking about Peter, it's just been a great honor to be up here. Thinking, leading up to this, I met Peter and Linda probably when I was about 17 years old. I was working at a place called John Anthony's in Brielle. And you know, what was very different about Peter, and Linda would always be by his side, instead of, like normally I deal with customers that come in and they'll buy, and I'll be there and they'll be like, oh, hey, Joe, or I'll come over. But Peter always had this presence that was, is Joe here? Where's Joe? And he would find me and greet me, talk to me, and then go about his business. One of the things where, other than just enjoying life and enjoying people and trying to be selfless, we both enjoyed the Yankees, can you tell? He was really something when it came to the Yankees. And I wanted to just maybe touch a little bit about that. But one thing I would be remiss to say, one thing where I knew that my wife was the person that I was going to be with at a time that I didn't. We had just became friends, my wife and I. And he would always say, "So what's going on?" In his Utica accent, "What's going on, Joe? How's it going?" I said, I met this girl that works next door in the pharmacy." And he goes, "Oh, yeah? Yeah, what's her name?" And I said, "Jen." And he goes, "I'll be right back." And he gives me a big smile. And then he comes back and he goes, "Magnificent, Joe. She is so beautiful. My God, that is great. Let me know." And ever since that day, every time I would see him, other than "Where's Joe?" "How's Jen?" Always first, my partner was always the first thing that he always said. And going onto the Yankees, him and I shared complaints together, wins together, laughter together, anger together at the way the management was doing things. But he had a way with me that was very different than a lot of people. Father Alphonse, don't take any offense to this. You have the same kind of ability to know when I'm going through something and I have to talk. And sometimes being Joe Leone isn't, it's great, and I love every blessing that it is. But sometimes, and Mayor Curtis, you would know this, when you're running in a business and things are stressful and employees don't show up or something. But Peter had an ability of sensing when something was going on and I was very stressed. And he used to, and I never told this to anybody, Linda, you don't even know this, right? When he would come into the store by himself, he would pick up on that and say, "Joe," and I'd be like, "Oh, Peter, what's he going to tell me? The pickle's got to go here, that he got a sandwich that had too much ham on it, and then you're losing money and all this stuff." Right, Mayor? So, and I love that about him because he was a big fan. Like, he always made sure things were in order, and if he saw something out of line, he would tell me or tell the employee. But he would say, come on, let's go outside. Let's go outside." And he'd sit down and he goes, "I would tell you about the time I saw Mickey Mantle play on this date and da-da-da." I'm like, "No. Joe, man, he had big arms and he would come out and then I got to go, I saw Joe DiMaggio," and he would bring up times and he would make me literally feel that I was like Peter Flihan in those eyes of what he saw. He told the story of what the Yankees were to me. And I used to say to myself, isn't that weird? I'm worrying about an employee just walked out or something happened, and I just feel like recharged again. And I mean, that is a special person. That is a special person that can identify stress, bring me out, bring me down, talk to me about the Yankees, and all of a sudden, I had the wonderful, wonderful way of just having that relationship with him. And then one day I get a call. "Hey, Joe, you're going to make some sandwiches. Me, Linda, Ron, and Winnie, we're going to go to the Yankee game." I go, "It's the World Series." He goes, "Yeah, we're going to the World Series." And they took me to the World Series. I've been to so many great sporting events and unbelievable. But to sit there next to Peter Flihan at a World Series game, and he's sitting next to me, Joe DiMaggio played right there. I remember when Ted Williams came here. I remember when Bucky Dent hit, just all different, Greg's Nettles. He would go through every single game, and I just would be like, I felt I was there. He was amazing. So I wore this, other than a suit and tie or my chef jacket that people recognize me with Mickey Mantle on the back. This shirt, when Yankee Stadium, he was upset that Yankee Stadium went down, and so was I, and I wound up going to the first game, and I went to the New York Steakhouse, and I told him about it, and he goes, "Well, how was it?" I said, "It was great." I said, the steak was good. He goes, "What I saw, what was really neat, where they had buttoned down dress shirts in the pinstripes." I said, "I was so impressed with that." I said, "If I knew," I said, "I would put my employees on that if we were ever in the Yankee the World Series or a pennant race or anything like that." And he goes, You want one? I said, I don't know. I said, I didn't think about that. I was just impressed with it. 3 days later, Peter Flihan had this shirt with him, and he hands it to me. And I said, Peter, I said, how did you get this? They don't sell this. This is a uniform. He goes, I've been around the Bronx. I'll never forget that. One of the things where I regret, because life goes by too quick, COVID comes into our life, Superstorm Sandy comes into our life. There's a gentleman, he asked not to be named, that has an amazing Yankee collection. And I've always said to Peter, and he's ever been busy or when his back was out and stuff, I'd say, Peter, the guy redid his basement. He has vaults in his basement of memorabilia. You're not going to believe the stuff he has. I said, he has a baseball hat that was worn by Babe Ruth. Oh my God, that's magnificent. Are you kidding? His eyes lit up. I said, I got to take you there. All right, next year. And we just always used to talk about, but life goes so fast, like you said, like just go out there and do it, because I regret that I didn't bring him there to see it. I went and explained that to this gentleman, and he lives in Wall. And I said, I need to borrow it for an hour. And I said, I want to show people who loved him what I couldn't have shown him. And that's why I'm shaking, because this is a very big moment. And I want to show all of you. And I know Peter's here because I believe in saints. Peter was born on All Saints Day, November 1st. And I'm sure he's up there in the ranking. It's not for me to pick saints, but he's up there. I'm sure the things that he did, as selfless as he was. This here was played by Babe Ruth. And I asked my friend, and he said, I don't care. I said, can I put it on my head so my friend can see it from heaven? And he said, go ahead, go at it. He said, make sure you Italians wipe the oil off your head. So I hope he sees it up there in heaven. And I just wanted to end and say, I have this, I don't know if you call it an ability or if any of you have that. When someone passes away, I get signs. And I'm always a believer that those signs are always there. But sometimes we don't get them, and sometimes we don't pay attention of them. So the other day, I'm downstairs in my basement after I got the call from Linda to come speak. I believe I'm wearing Babe Ruth's hat. I mean, I just can't believe this. But anyway, he's laughing. I'm saying, oh, my God. So I'm in my basement, and I'm all Yankeed. I'm not as Yankeed up as with Yankee memorabilia as the gentleman out in Wall. And I look up, and I'm tall, and I'm 6'5", and I look up, and I have a puzzle that I got. And I look up at this puzzle, and on the puzzle, it says, can you find Joe? Always used to say that to my team members. Can you find Joe? I just want to say hello to him. Can you find Joe? Where's Joe? And that was unbelievable. And I just, Peter, thank you for that sign to tell me that you confirmed with Linda that you wanted me to come and speak today, that he wanted for me to come here and speak. And I am so blessed that I have a friend that would trust me with a hat. I said to the police officer, can you walk me to my car? I know I'm 6'5", and if that happened, I'd fight you, and this thing would be on the ground and probably gone. So I said, if I'm going to have a little help from the police officer, but thank you so much. Santa Claus. I'm sitting in the office with Peter. He's doing his annual Christmas party. My little Joey Jr., that's now 21 years old. And I got to tell him that I got to tell Peter that he's going to be serving our country. He's going to the Air Force. Forgot to tell you, Father Alphonse, Joey's going to the Air Force. Little Joey comes in, and all of a sudden he looks at him and he goes, Jen, were you there when he did that? He goes, Santa! And that immediately, how he just switched. And he became Santa Claus in his regular plaid shirt and everything else. And he started talking to Joey like he was his best friend and that he was Santa. I mean, it was just amazing. And seeing him, I will never forget this, and we went to the seafood festival, and we didn't have it last year because of COVID. Seeing Peter Flihan come in with a broccoli rabe and sausage sandwich and making a mess all over that white beard and pieces of broccoli rabe going down his... and my brother-in-law Johnny used to go, think we should tell him about the broccoli rabe on the bread? I said, don't worry, Linda will tell him. And he goes, and then he'll eat it, knowing him. But thank you to the Flihan family. Thank you for listening to what I had to say about Peter. One of the most selfless individuals that I know, and I hope to meet many more of him. He really put others before himself. And all of you probably know the story, talking to Linda on that day that he went home to Jesus. And, you know, we always say family, forget about me, I love you at Joe Leone's. And he was that. He was family to me at Joe Leone's, and he'll always, always, always be remembered. And I will always, and I hope and pray someday, if I'm honored and blessed to be accepted into heaven, I hope that Peter's there saying, where's Joe? And going to meet me with the Yankees. And this bow tie my son gave me, and he said, wear the bow tie, Dad. I said, I'm going to wear the bow tie, because he gave me this bow tie, and I told Peter this story. He gave me this bow tie, and he said, Dad, you're going to wear this when I get drafted to the Yankees. So, Peter, if you're up there, talk to all the Yankees, God, make my son a Yankee. Talk to Joe D. But thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon. This is wonderful, Linda. Thank you. I'm going to go bring this back. Okay? I'm nervous. Thank you so much. You laugh just like them.
I'd like to invite Mr. Frank McLaughlin, the Associate Vice President for Fundraising and Athletic Director Emeritus from Fordham University.
It's nice when a boy from the Bronx gets out for the day, so enjoy it down here. I first met Peter in 1985 when I was named what I thought was to be athletic director at Fordham. And then as a couple of weeks went by, I learned out that I was really Peter's assistant. Peter had a great love for Fordham, especially Fordham athletics. It all started in the late 50s when Peter came down from Utica, and Peter and his beloved friend and roommate, John Travokas, started the Booster Club to support Fordham athletics. I find it very hard to believe that a Yankee fan and a Red Sox fan would work together, but they did a great, great job. As I got to know Peter traveling to sporting events, and I admired his love for Fordham, but more importantly, his love for Linda and Andrew and Peter and Jill and Dina, and especially his grandchildren, Emma and Joey. Peter loved to help others. Every year we have a big golf outing at Wingfoot to raise money, not only for Fordham athletics, but for campus ministry to help inner city people. And Peter, for many years, donated his famous stuffed rams to raise funds. And because of him, we hit phenomenal financial numbers that really helped athletics and also helped campus ministry. Peter and I had a secret that I've never shared with anybody until today. His friends from Midlothian will be very surprised by this. After I first met Peter, I realized that he had a very bad habit, that he was totally disorganized and very sloppy. over a long period of time, Peter overbecame this problem, and he gained, instead of being shy, he gained some self-confidence and started to express his views and organize everything. Peter was a very quick learner. Beach passes had to be held in a certain place. When you visited, you always had to replace. If you visited Peter and Linda's place in May, you came back for Labor Day, the refrigerator never changed. This is where the Diet Coke goes, this is where this goes, that goes. And God forbid if you drank a Diet Coke and tried to replace it with a regular Coke. That was sacrilegious. The highlight of my friendship with Peter was always the second weekend in August when they had the Bayhead Fire Department clam bake. It started at noon, but the new Peter Flihan made sure we were there at 11:30. Peter loved people, and he loved helping others. Peter had a big, big heart. There is not a day that goes by that my wife Susan and I and my 3 children that are now adults don't do something that Peter taught us. Peter made us all better. God bless Peter, Linda, Andrew, Peter, Jill, Dina, his grandchildren Emma and Joey, and his friends. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Mr. Scott Hulse, the Borough of Mantoloking Fire Company Chief.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Linda. I'm honored to speak today in behalf of Peter. I also run the Public Works Department in town, and Peter was a good friend of mine. We were working one time next to his house on a walkway. We were doing split rail fence and rebuilding the walkway. Peter came over with bottles of water. He gave them to us, and he worked with us. It was about 85 degrees. He was standing there, this screw's crooked, this board's crooked, this split rail needs to be fixed. Finally, about 15 minutes went by. Peter goes, "This is exhausting. I need to get back in the house." I said, "Linda's in the backyard looking for you. Please, Linda. Peter's looking for you." He did a lot. We had one of Peter's great achievements recently was the recycling program in town. We were having a lot of commingling going on with recycling, and he began stopping the garbage trucks. So the garbage man called me up and said, "You need to come see this. Your buddy's picking stuff out of the garbage truck and says this is not, people are commingling." So I had to go down there, and we sorted through the garbage truck, and Peter was happy, and that was an interesting day. And then another complaint we got was the garbage trucks are dirty. And I said, "Which part of the garbage truck? Because it has garbage in it." So he was not happy about that, and we called the vendor, and they started power washing the garbage trucks for us. One of our other achievements was, I know everyone knows about Santa Claus, but Peter and myself started a new program on the 4th of July. We have a parade in town. And Peter always would come to the firehouse and talk to me. And on the 4th, we have a marching band in the parade. And I never understood it because I have to come in and put the marching band on a trailer and trailer them through the parade. So Peter was with me, and he was standing there, and he looked lost. So I said, "Jump in the car. You're going to sit next to me, and you can do whatever you want." And he says, "Well, what do I do?" I said, "Say Merry Christmas. It's the 4th of July." So all of a sudden, we turned the corner. All of a sudden, Happy 4th. So he was all excited. He was his cheerful self, and the people loved him. And he was waving to everybody, being the ham that he was, and yelling people's names out as we do on Christmas. And it was just fun, and it became a tradition for the last 3 years. So the other tradition was the fire truck. I was the designated driver for the last 10 years with Peter. And I would stop by the house, and I'd lift him in the fire truck. And the tree laying would be at 5:30, so Peter had to be on that fire truck at 4:15. Okay, so it got tedious, and in Mantoloking in the winter, there's not a lot of people around. So any house that had lights on, I had him on the PA, and we would say Merry Christmas too. And if he saw a dog on the side of the street, he would say Merry Christmas to the dog. So this is a big event every year. We did, we had the one time where it just started growing. So all of a sudden we were going to Bayhead, and then finally the last year I had them all the way down to the Ark in Point Pleasant to welcome, wish Merry Christmas to everyone at the Ark on the fire truck, because we had to buy time. So the one story I'd like to tell, and it was one of our Christmas runs. It was the run after Sandy. We were staged over at the Towboat US, and Peter was with us. Bob McIntyre was driving the truck. We got up to Traders Cove on Mantoloking Road, if everyone's familiar with that. We'd hit the sirens. We had the horns going, everything. It was a real foggy, dreary night. And we got up to the peak of the bridge, and Chief Ferris had set up a Christmas tree on top of a sand dune. And there was I got to say, at least 150, 200 people on that sand dune. And I looked at Peter, and he was all choked up. And he never was choked up as Santa Claus. And I grabbed him by the shoulder. I said, "This is your show, kid." I said, "Let's do this." All of a sudden, this roaring "Merry Christmas" came out. "Merry Christmas, Mantoloking." I'm sure many people in the crowd have heard that from the fire truck. And that was one of we always talked about it. Peter would always stop down the firehouse and talk with me when he goes to the post office. And he also stopped at the Public Works building every day. And he'd always stop by at Christmas time. He had cookies for us. And 2 years ago, I asked him, "No more cookies, please, sir. I'm trying to lose weight." And so then we got a fruit tray. So that worked out. And I just would like to say thank you again, Linda, for letting me speak here. And now Linda has held on with the tradition. She stops over to Public Works Garage when she's at the post office. Every once in a while, we have a chat. So thank you.
I'd like to welcome Stacy Ferris to the stage. Stacy is the physical therapy manager, that's wrong. Stacy Ferris is from the Borough of Mantoloking, the police chief. My mistake.
It's okay. That would be a career change, definitely. I don't know if I have the aptitude for that one. What an honor, Linda, to be here with you and the family. And this family, our Mantoloking family, listen, I can't call him Peter. He was Santa to me. And on my office wall, there's a picture of Peter, Santa, and he will always be there as long as I am there. My first time meeting Peter, a lot of trash talk in here, I got a call because there was a glass container left in a garbage can. And I needed to respond because work ethic and doing the job you're paid to do was on Peter's to-do list. So it was my job to hunt down the garbage truck, bring them back to take that glass bottle away. And I said, Peter, I'm happy to do it. I will take the glass container and I will bring it to the trash truck and make sure. And he said, no, they must come back here. And I said, well, can they come back next week? Because they'll be back next week. And I'm pretty sure it was a Tabasco sauce container. Is that possible that it was Tabasco sauce? God love Peter. So Peter taught us some life lessons. In police work, it's if you see something, say something. Well, Peter would call and he would say something, and he was the best set of eyes. You couldn't replace him with a camera if I tried. If it was on the highway, if it was on the beach, Barnegat Lane, and yes, Mayor, he was the mayor of Barnegat Lane. Also, he was the captain of the neighborhood watch. Who knew we had one? But Peter was and will forever be the captain of the Mantoloking Neighborhood Watch. Because if it was happening within the border, he knew about it. And yes, he would beat us to the council meetings. Even in the old building with the slanted floors, he would sit there and he would wait. And many of us, I know Lieutenant Dreyer, Lieutenant Barkus are here. Remember the old building upstairs in the back of court. I think a lot of times he was the only resident to show up at court, and sometimes we outnumbered the defendants, but he would sit there and he would love to be surrounded by the guys and talking to them and talking to the prosecutor. Sometimes we were loud, and we would get yelled at by old Judge Morris for interrupting court proceedings because Peter would make us all smile, as he always did when he walked into any room with the cookies. We didn't get the fruit platter. We got cookies. Maybe we should have asked for fruit. Also, after Sandy, I know the ladies are here from Borough Hall. He was very helpful. He was hands-on. He had to do something, had to help put Mantoloking back together. He would go to Borough Hall, the Yogi Plaza version, and he would help the girls organize boxes and rearrange things so he could be part of putting us back together. Just going through my notes, apologize. So this year, I'd like to cause havoc. So I started thinking to myself, WWPFD, what would Peter Flihan do? So of course, when presented by speeders on Barnegat Lane, I put speed bumps in. Now I know Peter would probably have hated those speed bumps. Maybe not the placement, but he would have helped me decide where to put them, and we miss not having him there to do the WWPFD. But a lot of things we do these days, we're like, oh, what would Peter think? If it's a beach thing, what would Peter think? You know, if it's an ordinance change, what would Peter think? Peter wouldn't like this. And if you were a car and you were idling on Barnegat Lane, you were a drug dealer. And I knew about it. So that drug problem we have in town, Peter was on it. We don't have one. But if you were a surfer getting out of the car and you were gonna go check the waves, you were suspicious. But don't worry, the captain of the neighborhood watch was on it. And I know he'll be up there watching us forever. And I know that that makes me more at peace, knowing that Santa is up there and has all of our backs. Peter, I don't know if any of you knew this, but Peter was a scientist, and he was also into research. And Scott and I had gone back and forth on our notes. Did you know that Peter did an in-depth study on water pressure in the borough of Manahawkin? And he could tell you how long it took to fill a pitcher of water and what season it would vary by a couple of seconds. He was truly a researcher. He would also entertain you with the fact, I didn't know, been a Jersey Shore girl my whole life, that there is a difference between a white and a black garbage bag, and that seagulls prefer, I'll get it wrong, white bags versus black bags, and that the town should create an ordinance, and maybe we should still do, Mr. Mayor, an ordinance saying that you cannot use black garbage bags. White garbage bags? My apologies. White garbage bags attract seagulls. So we should only be using black garbage bags. So please, if you're a Borough of Manahawkin resident, this is your public announcement. Please, no more. We will call it the Peter Flihan ordinance. We'll get right on that because he would love it. He would truly love that. So on behalf of myself and future and former Manahawkin police officers, we couldn't be more blessed to have a more caring resident who we truly, truly treasured his visits. If you were having a bad, long day, and I know the ladies, Borough Hall would probably say the same, you could be so busy. Peter would knock on the window or knock on the door and want to come in, and you'd be like, oh, come on, not today, Peter. But by the time he left, you'd be smiling, and like I think Joe said, your stress level would be reduced, and you would be just refreshed because he had that joy and that smile and that mustache. You could not resist just buying into his infectious love for life. So thank you again to the family for letting us be here and be part of your day. And to Peter, we love you, Santa, as you will always be known. So thank you very much to Linda and the family, and God bless.
Now it's the physical therapist. This is Debbie Morat. She is the physical therapy manager at the Johnson Rehab Institute.
Hello, everyone. I am the real physical therapist here today. I'm here to represent my facility to share and honor our memory of Peter. I would like to share our experience with him and to celebrate his generosity and his kindness. So Peter was a patient in our hospital, and I had the pleasure and the privilege of being his physical therapist. He had such an amazing gift to people, even as a patient in our facility. He connected with people. He was very appreciative of everything we did for him and everything that we gave him in his rehab journey. Oh, sorry. He actually loved the food at Ocean Medical Center. He thought the shrimp franchise was the best food ever. And he loved his experience so much that he wanted to give back to us. So every single year, after 13 years, he came to Shore Rehab and hosted an amazing party. And we called it Flihan Fun Day. There's great pictures of it in the brochure. Our parties had themes. Peter hosted, and he purchased a beautiful lunch for the entire hospital, and he generously gave donations to the team members. We raffled them off all day long, so it was a very huge day of fun. Our parties were themed, and Peter loved that. So we had themes like Parrot Head parties and Cinco de Mayo parties, a Wild West party. Peter always came dressed for the party, always in style. I think His favorite party was our Mardi Gras party, because we crowned him the king of the Mardi Gras and we gave him a big imperial crown and he just loved it. The parties were everything that he was. Peter was happy, giving, and very personable, and that's what our parties were all about. Every year he came and he lectured and gave us a beautiful speech. It was beautiful from his heart, very emotional. Tears occurred, but he was very thankful and appreciative to his community that gave him this opportunity to go through this rehab program. He was very appreciative of healthcare workers. The party was everything he was. He sat with us every year and he shared his experiences, his passion. We talked about his travel, but he also connected with us. He wanted to know about our families and our children. And he sat with us every year and asked how our family was doing. I feel like he knew my daughter when she was tiny growing up, because every year we showed pictures and we talked about her. He was very connected and very genuine in connecting with those around him. At Shore Rehab, we will always be very thankful for Peter, for his kindness and his generosity. We will remember his smile and his pure heart and his generosity. Thank you, Linda, for inviting us here today so that we could share the story of what a wonderful man he was. He will forever be one of our family members at JRI. Thank you for inviting me.
It's now my pleasure to welcome two of our own, Father Alphonse Stevenson, who is the conductor of the Orchestra of St. Peter by the Sea. He's got a whole bunch of titles here, so I have to consult my notes. The founder of the Cecilia Foundation, and Brigadier General and State Chaplain of the New Jersey National Guard. Also with him is our Director of Education here at Algonquin, Julie Nagy, and they're going to do a musical presentation from a chorus line, What I Did for Love.
We do our presentation. I want to say that Peter was just such a special, special man. He used to sit right over there during performances. There, yes, right there during performances. And he would always be the first one up the steps when the Orchestra of St. Peter would perform here, to come and congratulate the members of the orchestra. In the 46 years that I've been ordained a priest, I've done many funerals. You could always tell the type of person that the guest of honor was by the amount of people that show up. On a Thursday afternoon, this amount of people speaks volumes about his generosity. We find it in Scripture that there are many gifts, and one of his most brilliant gifts was the gift of generosity. And not only in writing out a check, certainly he did enough of that. If it's for me, I'm too late. Certainly he wrote out checks as generously. But his real generosity was being enthusiastic for what other people did. And you could just do the slightest thing and he would tell you that it was the most wonderful thing that he had ever witnessed. What a gift and what a lesson for all of us. Maybe we'll get just as many people when we pass on into the next world.
This song from Chorus Line, I was gifted to conduct over 3,000 performances of this show. At the end, the question is asked, what happens when you can't dance anymore?
And what I did for love is the answer to that question. Everything, all the generosity that he has shown, in fact, is really summarized in a beautiful song which Julie will sing for us.
Kiss today goodbye. The sweetness and the sorrow. Wish me luck the same to you. But I can't regret what I did for love, what I did for love. Look, my eyes are dry. The gift was ours to borrow. It's as if we always knew. But I can't forget what I did for love, what I did for love. Gone, love is never gone. As we travel on, love's what we remember. Kiss today goodbye and point me towards tomorrow. We did what we had to do. Won't regret, can't forget what I did for love, what I did for love, what I did for
Ann Raver, the founder and former executive director of the Garden State Film Festival.
Thank you, Pam. I want to thank Linda for giving me the great honor and privilege of saying a few words today about our great friend Peter Flihan. I am truly humbled and honored. For those of us who had the great fortune to know Peter, know he may have been a man somewhat small of stature, but he was a bigger-than-life presence. You always knew when Peter Flihan was in the room. And I venture to say he would not have missed this shindig for anything, so I know he's here. As many of you know, my long career in the film business started right here in this building. These hallowed walls were my childhood movie house. It was right here that my imagination had no limit. It was here my love of cinema and popcorn was born. It was here that I was able to share that love of cinema with our community many years later, when I came back as an employee of Algonquin Arts Theater. That is how I first came to know Peter. Peter was one of those people who captivated you from the very first time you met him. He had a way of charming you with that twinkle in his eye, and his voice had a cadence that was mesmerizing. The dictionary defines generosity as readiness or liberality in giving,
freedom from meanness or smallness of mind or character. Peter, as you know, was generous to a fault. First, he was generous with conversation. There was no passing him by or him passing you by without a very long conversation about a multitude of subjects. And every single one of those long conversations, always without question, every single time, included a very proud father and grandfather's update on the status of his beloved children and grandchildren, peppered with a great deal of love and pride. He was generous with advice, again on a multitude of subjects, and always given unsolicited, mind you, but always with the greatest of altruism. But Peter was most of all generous with his love for the arts and their effect on all our body, mind, and souls. This love was the foundation for so much, for so many in our community, good times and bad. And as a result, so much nourishment for all our souls was a direct result of he and Linda's great generosity. They did and do believe the arts are a necessity. Bravo. Peter was generous with his resources. I once mentioned when I was here at the Algonquin that I needed support for a film program as he breezed by my desk one day. I watched as he tried to walk away. I said tried, but he was quick to backtrack and pledge his support. As a result, that show has become one of Algonquin Art's most beloved film shows, and the world's best short films program still plays here because he and Linda have continued to support it all these many years. And Doug LeClaire just reminded me that it's 10 years that they've been supporting it. He was generous with his laughter. It was infectious and full of joy. Of all the things about Peter I will miss his marvelous laugh most of all. But most importantly, he was generous with his loving nature. You always felt you were so important to Peter. It made each of us who had the good fortune of walking this planet beside him ever grateful for a day we crossed each other's paths. Farewell, Peter. We will meet again in glory. Until then, Godspeed.
Ms. Mona Kirk, would you please come to the stage?
I have to get myself together here. Linda, my husband John, Peter, and I have been friends for almost 20 years. I want to say, first of all, that my husband is so sorry that he can't be here today, but for health issues, he's not able to come. But you'll have to forgive me that my nickname for Peter was Cutie Pie. It was Cutie Pie, would you this, that, and the other thing. He was just adorable. He was small like my father. My father was a little man, but he was mighty, and so was Peter, small but mighty. He was sweet. He was the sweetest man I ever knew, aside from my husband. Very loving, very sweet. Generous, as we've all heard from everybody here today, that to a fault he was generous. He gave one of his precious stuffed teddy mares to my youngest great-grandson when he turned 3, and he treasures it. He was sensitive. I think we all know that. He was, when he sat behind me in row E, seat 1, I was in row D, seat 1, and whispered to me through the whole show about this or that. But many a show, a performance like Vittoria when she would sing with Father Alphonse, and at the musicals or whatever other show it was, he was the first bellowing voice, bravo, bravo, standing up and shouting, and everybody turning their heads because he was just so vigorous. He was dynamic. In fact, the Energizer Bunny could take a few hints from him. He was absolutely dynamic. Punctual, we've all heard about his punctuality. Yes, they insisted on picking us up for dinner in the theater when we would come here. And we would be dressing as fast as we could. And I go, John, the car's outside. It was like 20 minutes before our expected date. We were going to meet at 5:15. He was there at 10 to 5. So, same thing with with when we were on the board together. He would pick me up. Always, we were there before anybody else, and he had his wad of papers. Oh my God, he was something. When we would go to dinner, he would bring up well, first of all, I am Italian. Never mind my name is Kirk. That has nothing to do with my ethnicity. I'm Italian. He was half Italian. And he was so proud of Pope Pius XII being a distant relative. In fact, one of our members of the Manasquan River group of artists, to which I belong, brought in a portrait of Pope Pius XII. I'm not sure whether he gave it to him. Did he, Linda? Did he give that to him? Yeah, we were so proud of that. But anyway, what he would do would be, we would be sitting at the table, and he would bring up a subject. Oh, I have to say, too, that, first of all, we were known, Peter and I, as the Bickersons. If anybody knows the Bickersons, you have to be kind of a little bit long in the tooth to remember them. They were on the radio. I think Don Amici was the male partner, but they were a couple who always, had a little argument, something going on. Well, when we would get in the car going to the board meetings, he would bring up some subject or other, and the two of us would have opinions. And while we were going there, the conversation would continue. It was very animated and would continue right into the board meeting. So I think it was Jan Blanton that labeled us the Bickersons, which is I like that. But anytime, and then of course, many times sitting at the dinner table with Linda and John, he would be sitting across from me, and he would know what buttons to push. So he would bring up a subject that he knew I had a strong opinion about, and get this big, broad smile on his face, and I would, of course, take the bait. And I'm expressing myself, and he would try to interrupt me, and I was even driven a few times to pat the table and say, I am not done. You cannot speak until I'm finished. Well, I look at John, he's saying nothing. Linda's rolling her eyes. And by the time we were finished, we were hysterical. We were just laughing over everything. But, yes, just a minute, I'll be with you in a second. Well, we always enjoyed these discussions. Anyway, we would have long conversations about when we can come to the theater and what nights we would pick. And we would be commiserating over that over the phone. He would do all the legwork. he would go and get all the tickets. Naturally, I had to pay him, but we would get blocks and blocks of tickets. And as Pam said, we were always in our favorite seats. But during this 2020 thing, of course, we didn't go to dinner. We talked on the phone. And actually, the last time I talked to him was the night before he died. We were on the phone that night, and he was saying, oh, this 2020, we got to go to Siam Basil, we got to go to, we have to go to dinner. He said, really, I miss you guys. I miss you guys so much. I really, though, especially miss John. He said, you, Mona, not so much. So, of course, we both had a big belly laugh over that. So I just want to say, I miss you terribly, cutie pie. Love you.
To conclude, I'd like to invite Reverend Turton back to the stage.
We have listened to a tremendous amount of words. But what I've discovered is that they have flowed like a fresh, invigorating river into the vast ocean of the life Peter was privileged to live. So as we take those words into our hearts and minds, let us bow our heads in a moment of quiet as we remember God's presence with us, Peter's Spirit with us now. Now may that peace of God, which transcends all human understanding, keep your hearts and minds in the knowledge and love of God and of Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord. The blessing of God Almighty, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit be upon you and remain with you, your homes, your families, and all those for whom you pray, in this world and in that age that is dawning upon us. Amen.
Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine